where Michael Jackson had an absolute, total, and thorough inability to sleep.
I'm here to get justice for Michael Jackson.
Your Honor, I am an innocent man.
He was not an anesthesiologist. He was not board certified in cardiology. Conrad Murray was not board certified in any medical specialty. Michael Jackson's death was a homicide.
I'm continuing my exclusive interview with Ramon Bain, who knows Michael Jackson, knew him better than almost anybody, was his spokesperson for many years, and manager, and traveled the world with him. Ramon, who are you blaming? Who specifically are you blaming for this?
Well, I don't know everybody who was around him at the time, and I think the family is trying to find that out, too. Michael Jackson needed help, and he didn't get it. What is so sad about this, Jane, is that here is Michael Jackson with all his wealth, with all his means. He needed help. He had an incompetent doctor around him who, because of greed, continued to ply him with propofol, which is just absolutely sickening and egregious. And here is a man
Now, you're saying
who
that you
needed
don't
help.
think that...
He needed help, but he didn't get it.
Two things. You're saying two things. On the one hand, you're saying he needed help, but he didn't get it. On the other hand, you say you've never heard him slurring his words. And are you doubting the veracity of...
I am saying two things, and I mean, I think I said several here, but let me just make clear what I'm saying. I heard that tape today, and I had to pause because I'm wondering if there's any forensics having been done on that tape. I have been around Michael Jackson in times when things were far worse than this, and he didn't sound like a demon or somebody being possessed or the exorcist. I mean, I had to take pause.
High or
high or stoned. But the whole voice, the level of his voice, even if he were high or stoned, that doesn't turn your voice into something that's totally different. And I'm saying that I just wonder about the forensics.
Gotten it wrong?
I think that I'm suspect that Dr. Conrad Murray met with Michael Jackson and taped a conversation of his and hadn't even begun working with him. That was just revealed on your show. I had some concerns about the level of the voice and whether or not it's anybody I'd ever heard been around. But then when I find out tonight that it was taped before the doctor even came aboard, then I have to question, what is Michael Jackson doing on the doctor's cell phone? Why did the doctor tape Michael Jackson? What was that about? What was the purpose for doing that, number one?
Maybe, do you think it might not be Michael Jackson?
Well, I think that they need to do a little bit more forensics because I'm going to tell you, I've gotten a couple of calls from other people today who said, you know, Ramon, we've been around him for 20, 30 years. That does not sound like Michael Jackson. But let's just see what the forensic evidence says. But I want to tell you, my blood curdled because that's not any voice of Michael Jackson I have ever seen. And we've been around some very, 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 very serious circumstances that were far worse than apparently, I think, what was going on during that time. And I kind of question whether or not some good forensics were done on that tape. And then, if so, why did the doctor tape Michael Jackson before he began working for him? I have a question about that. Number two, the doctor was extremely careless and negligent, and he failed Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson is dead. He can't come back. No matter what happens in that court, no matter what I say, no matter what a family member will say, no matter how we analyze this, Michael Jackson needed help and he didn't get it. And he didn't get it because, one, he was alienated. People around him at that time were only concerned about money and how much they were going to make. And the doctor, I believe, fell victim to that as well. How in the world can you continue to administer propofol to someone who can't sleep? And Jane, when Michael Jackson was here in Washington, and the last time I saw him, which was late 2008, the last time I saw Michael Jackson, he was 165 pounds. He's about 110 pounds. He's lost 50 pounds.
died alone in his bed on the second floor of his Holmby Hills mansion. In the house at the time were the defendant, Conrad Murray,
Baby, there's a picture of Michael.
And some staff that helped run the home. Because there was no immediate, obvious causes to determine what caused the death of Mr. Jackson at 50 years of age. And what we learned through that investigation is that propofol, lidocaine, diazepam, a metabolite of diazepam called nordiazepam, lorazepam, and midazolam, all testing positive in the heart blood, all administered by Conrad Murray on June 25th, 2009. Further investigation by the coroner's office through statements, through interviews, through the autopsy, through the toxicology findings, led to the conclusion that the levels of propofol found in Mr. Jackson's body were at levels similar to general anesthesia when someone is put under for a surgical procedure. The coroner also found that the levels of lorazepam were pharmacologically significant and that they played a contributing role in the death of Mr. Jackson, because these benzodiazepines work in conjunction with the propofol to heighten the effects that each drug has. Following these findings, the coroner's office concluded this was, in fact, a homicide. That Michael Jackson's death was a homicide. And more specifically, the coroner's office concluded that the cause of death was acute propofol intoxication, coupled with the contributory factor of the additional benzodiazepines in his system. Upon discovering and ruling and determining this to be a homicide, the investigation continued. And the investigation centered on the dates preceding his death. The investigation centered on the events of June 24th and June 25th, 2009. And the question became, what occurred between June 24th, 2009, when Michael Jackson, shown in this picture, is performing at Staples Center, singing Bird Song? What happened between that time and approximately 12 hours later, when Michael Jackson is dead on June 25th, 2009? What you will learn through the evidence is that what happened during that time frame is that the acts and the omissions of Michael Jackson's personal doctor, Conrad Murray, directly led to his premature death at the age of 50. Ladies and gentlemen, as the judge indicated, this part of the trial is what is referred to as the opening statement. And it is, in fact, an opportunity to give you an outline of what we expect the evidence to show, to give you, as the court said, a roadmap. Oftentimes in trials, witnesses are called out of order due to scheduling and things of that nature. They may not always come in and testify in a kind of chronological order. So this is an opportunity for both parties to present to you in hopefully a logical fashion what we expect the evidence to show. And as I indicated, what we expect the evidence to show is that Conrad Murray repeatedly acted with gross negligence, repeatedly denied care, appropriate care to his patient, Michael Jackson, and that it was Dr. Murray's repeated incompetent and unskilled acts that led to Mr. Jackson's death on June 25th, 2009. Now, to give you some background as to what was going on at this time in Mr. Jackson's life, what was going on in Dr. Murray's life, I want to take you through some of the evidence that you will hear in this case. Now, at this time, Mr. Jackson was preparing for probably one of the biggest tours tours of his life, entitled This Is It. It was going to start at the O2 Arena in London. It was going to be Mr. Jackson's comeback tour. And Mr. Jackson indicated one of the reasons this tour was so important to him was that he wanted his children to have the opportunity to see him perform on stage in front of a large crowd. That they had never really had that opportunity, and that he wanted to give them that chance to see him perform in such a manner. The concert, the tour was scheduled to begin at the O2 Arena, and it was expected to last approximately 11 months. It would then continue in the months and years ahead, but at that point, it was for the approximately 11 months to take place at the O2 Arena in London, England. What started as a 10-day tour soon grew to 31 dates. When those tickets quickly sold out, it grew again to 50 dates. Those dates, too, all sold out. Now, in preparation for what was going to be a massive production and a massive tour, obviously rehearsals had to take place. And the rehearsals were taking place in Los Angeles beginning in May of 2009. They started in a small scale at Center Staging in Burbank, where basic production and rehearsals were taking place with various members of the production team. When the production and the growth and the scale of the rehearsals outgrew that location, they moved to the Forum in Inglewood. They remained at the Forum for approximately just about the entire month of June. And then just days before Michael Jackson's death, they moved to a larger scale arena at the Staples Center so that they could more accurately replicate what the actual tour was going to be. At the time of Michael's death, the rehearsals were taking place at the Staples Center. Now, during this time, Michael Jackson was living at 100 North Carolwood in Holmby Hills. It's just off of Sunset Boulevard, which is viewing here as an aerial photo. Where I'm pointing down below would be the front door. It's a two-story mansion, large yard, pool, lots of privacy. Mr. Jackson lived there with his family, his 3 young children, Prince, his young daughter, Paris, and his youngest son, Blanket. It was Michael and his 3 children that lived there on a permanent basis. He had staff, he had security, he had a nanny, he had a chef, but it was Michael and his 3 children that lived at 100 North Carolwood, which came to be where Michael would die. What do we know about Conrad Murray at this time? Well, we know Conrad Murray was a medical doctor. He was not an anesthesiologist. He was not board certified in cardiology. In fact, at the time of Michael Jackson's death, Conrad Murray was not board certified in any medical specialty. But Conrad Murray had met Michael Jackson previously in Las Vegas when Michael was living there in 2006. They had remained in contact. Dr. Murray had treated the children while in Vegas for various minor ailments such as runny nose and things of that nature. He had treated Michael for various minor ailments over the period of time. But they maintained contact from that point in time in 2006 through 2009. And what you'll learn is that in March 2009, Michael requested that Conrad Murray accompanied him on his O2 tour, the This Is It tour. Conrad Murray readily agreed to participate and accompany Michael on this tour. What you'll learn is that Conrad Murray initially requested payment of $5 million for 1 year of medical service. This was quickly rejected, and an offer of $150,000 a month was put on the table. What you will learn is that soon a contract had been drafted, and Murray was to be hired, Dr. Murray was to be hired as an independent contractor. Part of the terms of the contract provided that Murray would just provide general medical care, that he would provide medical emergency care, and that he would provide reasonably requested services. And this was all to be for the tour in London, the This Is It tour. In exchange for what Dr. Murray was to provide per the terms of the contract, Dr. Murray was going to receive, as I indicated, $150,000 a month, airfare to and from London, and housing in London for the duration of the tour. Again, the $5 million request of Dr. Murray was rejected, and the agreed upon amount was $150,000 a month. What you also learn is that this contract was never signed by the parties. What you will learn is that Conrad Murray, both as an individual and as part of his medical practice, signed the contract, and it's dated June 24th, 2009. No representative from AEG, the tour promoter, had signed it. And at the bottom, no representative, well, specifically Michael Jackson, had not signed it. So although it had not been signed, Conrad Murray had made it very clear that he welcomed the opportunity to enter this lucrative agreement. In fact, Conrad Murray made it so abundantly clear of his intention to enter into this lucrative agreement that he soon told his clients, his previous medical clients, to find another doctor. He sent out letters in June of 2009 advising his clients, because of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I had to make a most difficult decision to cease practice of medicine indefinitely. So he was saying goodbye to his clients with the intention of signing on for this $150,000 lucrative agreement that he, at least through words, had reached with Michael Jackson. I've told you a little bit about what Michael Jackson was doing at that time, and I've told you a little bit what Conrad Murray was doing at that time. You also need to know a little bit about propofol, and you will hear a great deal about propofol throughout this trial. What is propofol? Propofol is a general anesthetic agent. It's defined as an intravenous sedative hypnotic agent for the use in the induction and maintenance of anesthesia or sedation. Put simply, it's what's used to put you under when you have to be have forced mechanical ventilation, if you have to have surgical procedure. It is used in a hospital to put you under. It is not a sleep aid. It is not a sleep agent. It is a general anesthetic. It has great strengths. It is a wonderful drug if used by someone who knows what they are doing, someone who respects the dangers as well as the benefits of the drug. Some of its favorable properties include the quick onset of sedation. It acts rapidly. Also, at the end of it, rapid return to consciousness. So it acts quickly, and it also brings you back out rather quickly. Minimal postoperative nausea or vomiting. You generally feel okay once you come back out of it. However, with every benefit comes a cost, and there are unfavorable properties that must be respected by the doctor who is administering such a potentially dangerous drug. The unfavorable properties is that it leads to respiratory and cardiovascular depression. There's a narrow margin between sedation and full general anesthesia. And what that means is there's a continuum between a light or conscious sedation and full general sedation or anesthesia. And you need to be expert in that field and knowledgeable to be able to track that continuum and have the safety measures and precautions in place so that if the patient passes through that continuum to a deeper level of sedation, you have to ensure as the doctor in charge, as the doctor with legal duty of care, that you can manage any consequences that come forward. Also leads to the loss of ability to breathe and the ability to maintain your airway. And finally, because of these properties, things can go bad very quickly. Very quickly. And if you are not knowledgeable and competent and unprepared, it will lead to the death of your patient. The package insert that comes with it, that every single person would see if they just opened up the package, in plain text indicates that continuous monitoring is essential. Facilities for maintenance of a patent airway must be immediately available. This is in the package insert. Patients should be continuously monitored for early signs of hypertension, apnea, airway obstruction, and/or oxygen desaturation. A simple reading of the package insert would impress upon a competent medical doctor the precautions that need to be taken and the inherent dangers of using such an agent without the skills and knowledge and resuscitative equipment to handle it appropriately. In this case, you will hear about propofol. You will hear the science of propofol. You'll hear about the concentrations of propofol. As it relates to this case, what you'll hear, there are two separate vial sizes. It comes in a 100 milliliter vial. That's about that big, and that's the large vial. It additionally comes in a 20 milliliter vial, which is about that big. Each of these vials has the same concentration, and that is for each milliliter, there are 10 milligrams of propofol. 10 milligrams of propofol for each milliliter. So for the 100 milliliter vial, it's 1,000 milligrams of propofol. For the 20 milliliter vial, it's 200 milligrams of propofol. Now, how did propofol come to play a role in this case? Well, we know, as I indicated before, that in March 2009, Michael had enlisted the services of Conrad Murray, and Dr. Murray had quickly told his patients that he would be leaving medicine indefinitely. We also know that Conrad Murray then sought out a pharmacist, that Dr. Murray made arrangements with that pharmacist to purchase very large quantities of propofol on a regular basis. What we learned is that Dr. Murray went to Applied Pharmacy in Las Vegas and met with pharmacist Tim Lopez. Conrad Murray was not honest with Tim Lopez, and Conrad Murray indicated that he had a clinic in California when no such clinic or medical office existed. Conrad Murray indicated he had a large client base in California and that he wanted to get, eventually made arrangements to get shipments of propofol sent to what he characterized as his medical office in Santa Monica. What we know now to be what he characterized as his medical office was the apartment of his girlfriend and the mother of one of his children, Nicole Alvarez. So these arrangements were made between Conrad Murray and Tim Lopez, and the shipments began taking place from Applied Pharmacy in Las Vegas to the apartment of Nicole Alvarez, Conrad Murray's girlfriend. There was no medical practice, as I indicated, and the shipments began on April 6, 2009. On April 6, 2009, we know there was a shipment of propofol to Nicole Alvarez's address. And in that shipment were 10 bottles of the large 100 milliliter bottles, 1,000 milligrams of propofol each. There were also 25 of the 20 milliliter bottles in this first shipment of April 6, 2009. This first shipment, Conrad Murray's first order of business, resulted in a shipment of 15,000 milligrams of propofol to the apartment of Nicole Alvarez. But the shipments did not end with just that first shipment. On April 28th, there was another shipment of propofol to the apartment of Nicole Alvarez. This shipment was larger, 40 of the large 100 milliliter bottles, accompanied by 25 of the 20 milliliter bottles. This shipment accounted for 45,000 additional milligrams of propofol. Following the April 28th shipment, we had a shipment of midazolam and lorazepam, sedative agents that Conrad Murray Murray also admits to having administered to Michael Jackson on June 25th, 2009. And this shipment contained 10 vials of lorazepam as well as 20 vials of midazolam. And that was on April 30th, 2009. The shipments continued. But interesting to note, as it relates to Conrad Murray's knowledge of what these drugs were doing and his willingness to proceed with this manner of care in this fashion, we learn that on May 10th, 2009, Conrad Murray made a voice recording on his iPhone. His iPhone had an application called iTalk. And although an application on the iPhone is just like any other digital voice recorder, forensic computer specialists analyzed that iPhone and found this voice recording. They were able to timestamp it and date stamp it. The recording was made on May 10th, 2009 at 9:05 a.m. On that recording, you will hear Michael's voice. On that recording, you will hear the voice of Conrad Murray. The evidence will reveal that this voice recording documents Michael Jackson highly under the influence of unknown agents, with Dr. Murray evidently sitting nearby, evidently observing, maybe listening, but recording on his iPhone. What this evidence will reveal to you is Conrad Murray's knowledge of Michael's state on May 10th, 2009. What this evidence will reveal to you is Conrad Murray's knowledge of what he is doing to Michael Jackson on May 10th, 2009. Over a month and a half before Michael Jackson dies as a result of this very treatment. You will hear the whole recording during this trial, but I'll play a clip now so you can have a taste of what Conrad Murray knew on May 10th, 2009. This is Theodore. He's not transferring.
That's the recording.
Permission, may I play that again? I don't think we had sufficient volume. I'm going to play that recording again now that the volume's been turned up to an appropriate level. Listen to the voice of Michael Jackson on May 10th, 2009. That is what Conrad Murray is seeing and observing on May 10th, 2009. And what does he do with that knowledge? What does he do with that information? On on May 12th, he orders another shipment of propofol and midazolam. Again, he orders 40 of the 100 milliliter bottles of propofol just 2 days after that recording was made. Accompanying those 40 100 milliliter bottles were 25 20 milliliter bottles, for again a total of an additional 45,000 milligrams of propofol. The next shipment occurs on June 10th, at which point Conrad Murray orders again 40 100 milliliter bottles and now 50 of the 20 milliliter bottles, totaling in this shipment alone 50,000 additional milligrams of propofol. That is then followed on June 15th by an order of midazolam and lorazepam, again 10 vials of lorazepam and 20 vials of midazolam. And we learned from these shipments that from April 6th and the shipment of June 10th, Conrad Murray ordered 255 separate vials of propofol, totaling 155,000 milligrams of propofol, equivalent to 15.5 liters or 4.09 gallons of this general anesthetic agent. Just based on the orders alone, if you calculate from April 6th to the time of Michael's death of June 25th, in those 80 days, based on the orders, what was being shipped was 1,937 milligrams of propofol a day. And keep that number in mind when you hear the statements of Conrad Murray in regard to how much he administered on June 25th. Now I want to talk about what the evidence will show in regard to Michael's final days. What you'll learn is that on June 19, 2009, Michael showed up for his rehearsal, and he was not in good shape. He was not in good shape at all. He had chills, he was trembling, he was cold, he was rambling, and Kenny Ortega, the co-director, co-choreographer of the production, from whom you will be hearing directly, was concerned. He had never seen Mr. Jackson in that state previously. He will tell you that Michael did not rehearse that day that he sat. He will tell you that Michael was cold. He put a blanket around him. He provided him some chicken to eat. He massaged his feet to try to warm him. But that Michael ended up going home early that evening and not rehearsing because of the state, the physical state he was in. You also hear about the next day, June 20th, 2009. And what you'll hear is that there was a meeting called at Michael's house at 100 North Carrollwood. And at this meeting were Conrad Murray, the defendant, Michael, Kenny Ortega, Randy Phillips, and a discussion was had at that meeting about Michael's health, and more specifically about what had transpired the night before on June 19th. And what you'll hear from Kenny Ortega is that Conrad Murray took a very hostile tone. He scolded Kenny Ortega for meddling in what evidently was Conrad Murray's area of expertise. He said things to Kenny Ortega when concerns were expressed. He said things such as, "I am the doctor, not you. You direct the show and leave Michael's health to me." He said, "Michael is physically and emotionally fine. Don't let it be your concern. I am the doctor." Following this meeting of June 20th, rehearsals did not take place that day, the 21st, or the 22nd. But they did resume on June 23rd, 2009. And you'll see footage of Michael performing on June 23rd, 2009. And by all accounts, it was a successful rehearsal at the Staples Center. Michael appeared strong, he was optimistic, and he was looking to the future. And he was looking to get the tour off the ground and head out to London. The following night, rehearsals resumed again. That's June 24th, 2009. And again, the rehearsal went well. Michael was engaged. He was optimistic. In fact, you'll hear from Kenny Ortega that Michael was excited because the next day they were going to be performing an illusion that was going to be part of the tour. And Michael always loved that type of magical illusion aspect of these shows. And so Kenny had told him that tomorrow we're going to do the illusion. And Michael was looking forward to coming back that next day to participate in that illusion. As you now know, he never returned to Staples Center. Following that rehearsal, the night of June 24th, 2009, Michael was taken home, and he arrived home at about 1 o'clock in the morning, which would be the morning of June 25th, 2009. What you'll learn is that it was customary that Conrad Murray would spend the night at the house, every night, sometimes only 6 nights a week, but nearly every night for at least 2 months, 2.5 months. In his own words, his purpose for being there was to put Michael to sleep with propofol. So when Michael and his security staff arrived at the house from Staples Center during those early morning hours of June 25th at around 1 o'clock in the morning, Conrad Murray's BMW was already parked in the driveway. Michael was brought into the house. Security was debriefed. The customary routine was followed. Again, the house at 100 North Carrollwood, the front door that faces out into the front courtyard, a diagram, which is difficult to see from this perspective, but a diagram of the entryway, where I'm pointing down below would be where the front door is located. You come into this front foyer area. As to the relevant location of where Michael died, you would go to the left up these stairs, and you'd go into this foyer where I'm pointing here, into the bedroom where Conrad Murray would do his nightly infusions of propofol to Michael Jackson. You'll learn that this room on the far left was actually Michael Jackson's personal bedroom, but that the propofol administrations occurred in this room here. From the foyer, it goes into the bedroom through a very large closet, the size of a typical bedroom, and then into the restroom. This view here is looking through the front glass doors into that foyer area with the stairs I just described being here on the left leading up to this landing. And again, just a blow-up of the diagram showing the relevant room where Michael Jackson received these propofol infusions, the foyer, the bedroom, the large closet, and the bathroom. This is a picture depicting the bedroom where Michael Jackson died. He died in that bed, pointing down here below the slide. This picture is the closet I showed you on the diagram, and it's a vantage point of the closet looking into the bathroom that I described. And then into the bathroom depicting what is shown there, the clothes, and in fact, the jacket that Michael was wearing at his last performance that night on June 24th, 2009. As I indicated earlier, the question becomes what transpired then from 1 o'clock in the morning till Michael's death the next day. And before I relay to you some of the words of Conrad Murray as to his story of what transpired, I want to share with you what the independent investigation by law enforcement revealed absent Conrad Murray's statements. What you'll learn through phone records is that Conrad Murray was very busy on the phone that night. There are screenshots from the iPhone showing him receiving, reading various emails. There's text message. There's different screenshots showing various activities of Conrad Murray on his phone. There's a very relevant email that Conrad Murray receives. It's sent at 5:54 a.m. Conrad Murray responds to it at 11:17 a.m. on that day, and that time will be very relevant. But it's not just relevant for the time, it's relevant for the substance. Because this email that you're viewing on this screen is an email from the insurance broker in London that is trying to collect medical records so that they can have the tour properly insured. And Conrad Murray's asked specific questions about press reports relating to Michael's health, and that it's required in order to get the insurance. And Conrad Murray responds by his own email on June 25th at 11:17 a.m. And what he says is that as far as his health published by the press, let me say they're all fallacious to the best of my knowledge. This is on June 25th, 2009, just days after the meeting, month and a half after the May 10th recording, and Conrad Murray represents to the insurance broker that all concerns or press reports about Michael's health are fallacious. We also know through the phone records what was taking place that night. And we have the early morning phone calls, which will be described to you through witness testimony and evidence during the trial. But as we get closer to the time that Conrad Murray indicates he provided propofol, we have a 10:14 a.m. phone call, a 10:20 phone call, a 10:34 phone call, an 11:07 phone call. We then go to an 11:18, 32-minute phone call to Conrad Murray's business in Las Vegas, followed by a brief message to one of his female friends, Bridget Morgan, at 11:26, a call with Robert Russell at 11:49, and then a call at 11:51 with another female friend, Sade Anding, who lived in Houston, Texas. And you're going to hear from Sade Anding. And what she's going to tell you is that she was working as a cocktail waitress in Houston. She met Conrad Murray. They exchanged phone numbers. And that Conrad Murray referred to her as his girlfriend. What you'll learn from the nature of this 11:51 phone call is that this is likely the time that Conrad Murray first noticed Michael Jackson's lifeless body. It won't reveal to you the time of Michael Jackson's death, but it may reveal to you when Conrad Murray first noticed Michael Jackson had died. Because what Sade Anding tells us is that this 11:51 phone call took place, that she was speaking on the phone when she realized there was no response on the other end. Conrad Murray was not communicating, was not participating in the conversation. Sounded as though the phone had been put down. She heard a commotion. She eventually hung up. She tried to get back in touch with Conrad Murray, but was not successful. She indicated that this occurred about 5 minutes into the 11:51 phone call. So about 11:56, 11:57 a.m. is when the phone goes dead and she no longer is able to communicate with Conrad Murray. At 12:12, we have a phone call from Conrad Murray to Michael Williams and a return phone call from Michael Williams at 12:15. Now, who is Michael Williams? Michael Williams is the personal assistant to Michael Jackson. He was not at the house on that day. He was actually at his own house downtown Los Angeles. But he receives this call, I believe he's in the shower, at 12:12 p.m. And you'll hear the recording that Conrad Murray leaves on Michael Amir Williams at that time. Getting this message that shows up on his phone at 12:13, Michael Amir Williams calls Conrad Murray back immediately and is told to get here right away. Mr. Jackson had a bad reaction. He's not told to call 911. He's simply told to get there right away from downtown Los Angeles to 100 North Carrollwood in the Holmby Hills area. Michael Amir Williams makes a number of phone calls and eventually gets a hold of Alberto Alvarez, who is at the location. Alberto Alvarez is a security guard. He's part of Michael Jackson's personal security. They actually were housed in this trailer to the side of the house. Alberto Alvarez, being on site, is told to go into the house, that there had been some kind of problem and Michael Jackson had a bad reaction, according to Conrad Murray. Alberto Alvarez goes into the house and eventually goes upstairs. He goes up these stairs shown in this picture, gets up to the landing, and proceeds into the bedroom, where he sees what appears to him to be Michael Jackson's lifeless body on the bed. Conrad Murray is giving CPR with one hand while Michael lay on the bed. Alberto Alvarez observes a condom catheter. He didn't know it was called a condom catheter, but he observes some device and tubing coming from the penis of Michael Jackson. What the medical experts will tell you is this is a device to collect urine when you're literally knocked unconscious for surgical procedures. This is what he sees on the body of Michael Jackson when he comes into the room and sees what he appears to be, to him, a dead Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray begins instructing Alberto Alberto Alvarez immediately upon his entry into the room and tells him, grab a bag. And Conrad Murray grabs a handful of vials from the nightstand and drops them in the bag. He also tells Alberto Alvarez to grab the saline bag, or the bag hanging from the IV stand in the room. Alberto Alvarez does so. And Alberto Alvarez notes that it was actually a bag that appeared to be clear in nature, and it had a bottle inside of it. A bottle that we later learned to be a propofol bottle. Alvarez complies with the requests of Dr. Murray, and what we know is subsequently this is corroborated by law enforcement, because when they go back to search the house on June 29th, they find a bag, and inside that bag is an empty saline bag, which you'll see in court, but it's slit open from top to bottom. And inside that bag, you'll hear from the coroner investigator, they found this 100 milliliter bottle of propofol inside the bag. And you will hear testimony about the significance of that when the medical experts come in and explain it to you. Following the commands of Conrad Murray, Alvarez is then told to call 911, and he immediately does so. And what you'll learn is that 911 call was made at 12:20 p.m. What you also learn from the evidence is that phone call was not made at 11:56 or thereabouts when Sade Anding had heard the phone go dead and heard commotion in the background. That 911 call was not made at 12:12 p.m. when the defendant called Michael Amir Williams to say there had been a problem. That 911 call was not made at 12:15 when Michael Amir Williams returned the call and spoke to Conrad Murray, who only relayed to him that he needed to get there right away. The 911 call was instructed to be made by Conrad Murray at 12:20 p.m. Now, emergency response was on the scene immediately. However, it was altogether too late because Michael was already dead. But the paramedics did respond to the scene, and they took every effort they could to revive Mr. Jackson. You'll learn that they got on scene on top of the patient at 12:26 p.m. His pupils, Mr. Jackson's pupils, were fixed and dilated. There was no pulse noted by any of the paramedics on scene. Murray had indicated he felt that Jackson had been down only a minute. I was just talking to him. Although no one felt a pulse, Murray claimed he did. This was not felt by any of the emergency medical personnel on scene. And when specifically asked, what have you been giving him? What has he taken? The paramedics were told lorazepam. Specifically asked what had been administered. They were told lorazepam, and Conrad Murray never once mentioned the administration of propofol during his entire dealings with these emergency medical personnel. UCLA was on the phone with the paramedics, and they pronounced Michael dead. Conrad Murray indicated he wanted to take over responsibility and that he would accompany Mr. Jackson in the paramedics' rig. And that was agreed upon. So they transported Michael Jackson to UCLA. In this photo here is the paramedics' arrival to UCLA. This is actually Conrad Murray here in these loose pants and a white T-shirt. Nearby, I believe, is some of the security, Fahim Muhammad, Alberto Alvarez, Michael Amir Williams. And this is them entering UCLA, the emergency room area. When they enter into the emergency room area, obviously the emergency room doctors now want to know what transpired. So they inquire. Both Dr. Cooper and Dr. Wynn specifically asked Conrad Murray, what has he been taking? What have you given him? He indicates he had been taking Flomax, and he'd had some Valium. The only agent he gave him was lorazepam. And never once mentions to these medical emergency room doctors that are trying valiantly to save Michael Jackson's life, never once mentions that he had administered any propofol whatsoever. Michael is eventually pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. on June 25th, 2009. Following this is a search at the house at 100 North Carrollwood. Propofol bottle is found lying on the floor. Various prescription medicines are found on the nightstand, the majority of which are prescribed by Conrad Murray, although some are prescribed by other doctors. An ambu bag is found on the floor, which I'll talk about briefly in a moment. This syringe is found on the nightstand, and this syringe tests positive for both propofol and lidocaine. Also, this IV stand with a saline bag and a detached IV tubing and syringe was observed and collected on a subsequent day, but that syringe tested positive for propofol, lidocaine, and flumazenil. They observed on this table nearby where Conrad Murray would evidently sit a cardiology board review book, a book designed to help someone take and pass the cardiology board exam. They found a jug of urine seated on the chair, likely emptied into by use of the condom catheter that had been observed on Michael. And again, they saw the clothing, the jacket and the pants worn by Michael Jackson at his last performance on June 24th, 2009. Now that's some of the evidence that was collected independent of Conrad Murray. The phone records depicting what he was doing, because you must recall there are only two people in this room, and Michael, being one of those two people, is dead. So the detectives did what they could to piece together the activities in that room through forensic, through phone records, to determine what were the actions of Conrad Murray. It is crucial that a patient go in informed right that time, before the procedure, before the sedation, before the anesthetic agent is used, and with written informed consent, sign that they willingly acknowledge the dangers. And no such document was found or created. This is an extreme violation of the standard of care. This alone amounts to gross negligence. Requires charting and documenting all vital signs, dosages, at least every 5 minutes.
Words, 1 to 20 times. 30 days a month, roughly, every day.
30 days a month, roughly, every day, for the over 2 months of his care that he was administering to Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray then proceeded to give a timeline of events of that night. And he states that he first put an IV in Michael Jackson's leg to hydrate him. That he started with Valium at 1:30 a.m. At 2 a.m. he switched to lorazepam, 2 milligrams. But Michael remained awake. This is all according to Conrad Murray. At 3 a.m. he switches to midazolam. Says he slept for about 12 minutes. At 3:20 a.m. until 4:30, Michael's still awake, according to Conrad Murray. At that point, again, according to Conrad Murray,
He was awake. It was 4:30 in the morning, and he was wide awake. And then he complained. I got to sleep, Dr. Conrad. I have these rehearsals to perform. I must be ready for the show in England. Tomorrow I will have to cancel my performance. I have to cancel my trip because, you know, I cannot function if I don't get the sleep.
following that statement, according to Conrad Murray, at 5 a.m. he gave another round of lorazepam, followed by another round of midazolam. At 10 a.m., according to Conrad Murray, Mr. Jackson requested propofol.
If you got propofol now, which of course you refer to as the milk, how much time, how much sleep you expect to have? You're going to be needed to be up no later than noon. And he said, just make me sleep, doesn't matter what. I told him what happened to your rehearsal and it's scheduled for today. He said, I can't function if I don't sleep. They'll have to cancel it. I don't want them to cancel it, but they will have to cancel it. So, I agreed at that time that I would switch over to the propofol.
So the evidence will reveal, according to Conrad Murray's words, that once Michael Jackson indicated desired to cancel the rehearsal, Conrad Murray decided to give propofol. Once he knew that he did not need to get up at noon, Conrad Murray decided to give propofol. Now what Conrad Murray indicates is that he gave just 25 milligrams of propofol diluted with lidocaine. Whether or not this was followed up with a continuous drip will be for you to decide. But the amount he specifies is 25 milligrams of propofol. According to the experts, this would have put Michael to sleep for minutes, 5, 10 minutes, depending on the person. When you know from Conrad Murray's own words, Michael Jackson just said, "Cancel the rehearsal, I need to sleep." The evidence will reveal that much more than 25 milligrams of propofol was given in order to put Michael Jackson to sleep. According to Conrad Murray, it was slowly infused over 3 to 5 minutes, and he went to sleep. To give you an idea of what a minuscule amount of propofol we're talking about, 25 milligrams equals 2.5 cc's or 2.5 milliliters. In your standard 10 cc syringe, this is how much propofol Conrad Murray is admitting to giving on June 25th. But the evidence also shows, as already discussed, that from the time of April 6, 2009 to Michael's death, over 155,000 milligrams of propofol had been shipped to Nicole Alvarez's apartment. But according to Conrad Murray, he gave just 25 milligrams that night. Following the administration of propofol, Conrad Murray indicates,
I've been watching for a long enough period that I felt comfortable. Then I needed to go to the bathroom. So I got up, went to the bathroom to release myself of urine, and also considered getting rid of some of his urination that he had put in the jugs overnight. When I came back to his bedside, and it was stunned in the sense that he wasn't breathing.
the medical experts will tell you that is called abandonment. To take a patient with Valium, lorazepam, midazolam, and propofol, and to leave them unattended in that state is medical abandonment. But according to Conrad Murray, he was gone for but 2 minutes.
I would say about 2 minutes, but 2 minutes.
The evidence, again, as I already indicated, shows phone records around this time reflecting approximately 45 minutes worth of phone calls, where for some reason around this time Conrad Murray decides to start making phone calls and conversing with other people. Right at the time when he indicates he had given the propofol at about 10:45 a.m. Back to the email at 11:17 a.m. It is at this time that Conrad Murray is responding to the insurance broker. While Michael lay in bed with all these drugs circulating through his body, Conrad Murray is literally emailing the insurance broker saying the reports about Michael's health are fallacious. Responding to the 911 call and the failure to call, you will hear from Conrad Murray himself that he does not call 911.
Speak to a 911 operator would be to neglect him.
So why didn't he have Michael Amir Williams call 911 when he called Michael Amir Williams at 12:12 p.m.?
I want him to, I couldn't ask him at that time to call 911 because he was wanting to know what it was about, and I have a patient that needs help, and I'm trying to assist, and I'm trying to do it the best I can, and to try to get help.
In the same interview, Conrad Murray indicates the location of his medical bags. And you'll hear the interview. And you'll hear, the evidence will show, that Conrad Murray sounds surprised that the medical bags were not already in the custody of LAPD. He makes a comment of, oh, you don't have them? He then tells them where the bags are, and they are recovered on June 29, 2009. And where they are recovered, again, this is the bedroom where Michael died. This is the large closet, which is basically a room. And the arrow pointing to that closet there. then the bathroom here. The items are actually recovered in this upper chamber
Because there was no immediate
closet. And three distinct bags. There's a blue Costco bag. There's what's been referred to as a baby essentials. It appears to be some kind of diaper bag or something of that nature. Blue and brown. And then there's this small black bag. The items were recovered, and you'll hear all about the medical evidence that is recovered, the propofol bottles that are recovered. I'll talk a bit about this pulse oximeter that was recovered. Again, the saline bag with the bottle inside of it that Alberto Alvarez had mentioned was in fact recovered by coroner investigator Alyssa Fleet. Propofol bottles, lorazepam bottles, midazolam bottles, lidocaine bottles, all recovered at that location. Now the standard of care, ladies and gentlemen. The standard of care in a medical case such as this hinges on a number of factors. And medical experts will testify to the standard of care and the gross lack of any standard of care exhibited by Conrad Murray. But they analyze the actions, the affirmative actions, they analyze the omissions by Conrad Murray. And they characterize it as minor deviation from care, a serious deviation from care, or an extreme, egregious deviation from care. Extreme deviation from care, meaning the doctor acted with gross negligence. Gross negligence, which is the element of involuntary manslaughter. Involuntary manslaughter is not an intentional homicide. It is a homicide as a result of one's gross negligence and essentially indifference. So I'm going to take you through some of the factors of analysis in the standard of care. You will hear that propofol is a powerful anesthetic intended for use in highly monitored settings such as hospitals, operating rooms, intensive care units, and surgical suites. Locations where they have advanced capabilities not only to treat the individual, but to revive the individual should things go bad. This type of setting is where propofol is utilized, not this type of setting. And you will hear from the medical experts with unanimity that the improper setting represents an extreme violation of the standard of care and amounts to gross negligence on the part of Conrad Murray. You will additionally hear that propofol is for the induction and maintenance of general anesthesia, for mechanically ventilated patients, and for procedural sedation. It is not indicated by any means for the treatment of insomnia. It is not an agent for the treatment of insomnia, and to use it to put someone to sleep in that manner is an extreme deviation from the standard of care that amounts to gross negligence. You also learn that propofol requires continuous medical monitoring. It requires an electrocardiogram, an ECG, so you monitor the heart. It requires automated blood pressure monitoring, pulse oximetry with an alarm, and capnography. Capnography measures the CO2 exhalations of your body. Blood pressure, the ECG measures the heart. So what did Conrad Murray have at scene? Well, as I indicated, there was an ambu bag found on the floor. But in Conrad Murray's own tape-recorded interview, he makes no mention of using the ambu bag. In fact, what you'll learn from the coroner's investigators is that when they recovered the oxygen tank near the bed and pulled it out of evidence after it had been booked into evidence, the oxygen tank was empty. So not only was the oxygen tank empty, but Conrad Murray himself makes no mention of using this ambu bag, which in theory would have been hooked up to that oxygen tank. There was no capnography monitoring equipment. There was no ECG. He did, in the house, a blood pressure cuff was recovered. The blood pressure cuff was recovered in the closet, inside of a zippered black bag, inside of this box, inside of this second black zippered bag, and by all appearances, and you will have this in evidence, appears to be pristine, if not unused. That is the blood pressure cuff that was found at the scene.
Blood pressure cuff, not even
How about
used.
pulse oximetry? Pulse oximetry measures the oxygen saturation in your blood, and it is absolutely a crucial component when administering agents such as this. However, as part of that absolute crucial component, it needs to have an audible alarm so that when things go bad, you know it. What Conrad Murray was using is this. It is the least expensive pulse oximeter probably on the market. It works just fine for particular needs, and that is, it's designed literally to be worn around a doctor's neck as they make the rounds at a hospital. They clip it onto a patient's finger, and they spot check. They literally, on site, look at the reading on the monitor to get a reading of the oxygen saturation levels. There is no audible alarm on this pulse oximeter. If you are not literally staring at this tiny screen, this is utterly useless. And for hundreds of dollars more, Conrad Murray could have had a real pulse oximeter with an alarm. It would not have justified him abandoning his patient, but at least there would have been the security of an alarm when oxygen saturation levels reach dangerous levels. This is what Conrad Murray characterized as the necessary safety measures. Propofol requires immediate access to all standard resuscitation equipment and drugs. This would include a crash cart, an automatic defibrillator, and emergency airway equipment, such as endotracheal tubes, things of that nature, so you can ventilate the patient, get air into their system, so you can bring them out of any dangerous situations. None of that was at the scene. None of that was recovered at the scene, nor does Conrad Murray make any mention of having any of that at the scene. This was another extreme deviation from the standard of care and amounts to a serious neglect and gross negligence. Propofol requires continuous presence, visual monitoring, and vigilance. And if you are the type that is willing to abandon your patient, then you need to make sure there's another individual who's skilled in the area of resuscitation and medical care to monitor that patient with two eyes on the patient. It's absolutely critical when you're dealing with an agent such as propofol. But we know from Murray's own words that he abandoned Michael Jackson. This, including the abandonment, including the preoccupation with the email and the phone calls, amounts to another extreme deviation, gross negligence, gross medical care. The benzodiazepines, when combined with the propofol in this type of setting, they contribute to the respiratory problems, the cardiovascular problems. They heighten and exacerbate the dangers that already exist individually in each agent alone. So in this setting, without the necessary equipment, without the necessary resuscitative equipment, this, again, is yet another extreme deviation and amounts to gross negligence. Written informed consent. This is a process by which doctors discuss the procedure, a serious procedure such as this, with their patient. They discuss the dangers, the alternatives, the complications, the risks, the benefits. It is crucial that a patient go in and realize what they gave at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, so they don't have to guess. It is also absolutely crucial in a setting such as this, when emergency personnel are responding and seeking out the truth, and they cannot find the truth. No medical documents were recovered, and when they were subpoenaed and requested, the only documents provided related to care months, if not years before. No medical records documented any of this care at 100 North Carrollwood. This is an extreme, egregious violation and represents gross negligence standing alone. Basic common sense requires that 911 be called immediately.
Next time, close the door.
Common sense. And we know that was not done. This is another extreme deviation from the standard of care and amounts to gross negligence. Also, note the relationship between his medical judgment, his medical knowledge to advise the patient, to refuse inappropriate care, to walk away if that is the only option, but to have a doctor-patient relationship where the doctor is in charge of the care to be administered. And if it is not appropriate care, then the doctor does not provide it. No, what the evidence shows existed here was an employer-employee relationship, where Conrad Murray was working not for the best interest of Michael Jackson, not for the health of Michael Jackson. Dr. Murray was working for $150,000 a month.
Doing a
He was
live
an
video
employee. He
on
acted
the
as an
trial of
employee. He did not act as
Dr.
a medical
Conrad
professional
Murray.
using sound medical judgment.
At this time, I'm going to go ahead and transfer some other
In an
files,
egregious and unethical violation
so
of
you'll be
standard
seeing
of care.
additional things
The
going
evidence shows
on.
Conrad Murray
But
deceived
I will
the
continue the
paramedics.
video.
When specifically asked what agents had been given, he never once mentioned propofol. As a team of paramedics worked to bring Michael back to life, Conrad Murray remained silent as to the propofol he had administered. This is an extreme, unethical, and unconscionable violation of the standard of care and is by itself gross negligence. But this was repeated once again upon his arrival at UCLA, where he deceived the emergency room doctors. When specifically asked by Dr. Wynn, when specifically asked by Dr. Cooper what had been administered, Conrad Murray mentioned lorazepam. He made no mention of propofol to these doctors trying to save Michael's life. You will hear from the doctors about these levels of gross negligence, and you will hear their opinions, in which they state that almost nothing the defendant did reflects the actions of a trained physician. It instead represents the actions of an unskilled, non-medically trained individual. You will hear from an expert who will tell you that the multiple breaches of the standard of care directly contributed to Michael Jackson's untimely death. You will hear from the experts that the defendant acted with gross negligence, indicating a far greater concern for himself than his patients. And you will hear that Murray's primary use of his medical training and licensure was to give Jackson access to unlimited supplies of propofol that he administered with complete disregard for Michael Jackson's safety and for Michael Jackson's life. And put most simply, you will hear that Conrad Murray acted with gross negligence and an extreme departure from the standard of care and was a cause of Michael Jackson's death. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a summary of the evidence you will hear in this case. The defense will obviously have an opportunity to present evidence. They will have an opportunity to present an opening statement if they so desire. Regardless of what is presented by the defense in this case, there are certain facts that will be beyond dispute. There will be certain facts that will remain unchanged and unchallenged. Conrad Murray, as the doctor on scene, had a legal duty of care to use his best medical judgment to do no harm to Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray, with his eyes on the anticipated $150,000 lucrative contract, instead agreed to provide Michael massive amounts of propofol on a regular basis in complete disregard of all acceptable standards of medical care. The evidence will also remain unchanged that Conrad Murray figuratively and literally abandoned Michael Jackson on June 25th, 2009. He left this vulnerable man filled with Valium and midazolam and lorazepam and propofol with no medical monitoring equipment, no necessary resuscitative equipment. He left him there, abandoned him to fend for himself. every standard of care, but decency from one human being to another. Michael was in that state, in that bed, because of the drugs administered by Conrad Murray. That is why he was in that state, in that bed, when Conrad Murray walked out of the room to make phone calls, to go to the restroom, or whatever he may have done. Whatever theory the defense puts forward, whatever evidence the defense puts forward, it will be clear that Conrad Murray abandoned Michael when he needed help. It was Conrad Murray's gross negligence. It was Conrad Murray's unskilled hands and his desire to obtain this lucrative contract of $150,000 a month that led Dr. Murray not only to abandon his patient, but to abandon all principles of medical care. Conrad Murray's actions, Conrad Murray's omissions to act, directly caused the death of Michael Jackson. And at the close of all the evidence in this case, after you've absorbed all the facts in this case, and have absorbed the law in this case, the people will ask you in no uncertain terms to return with a verdict of guilty for the solitary crime charged involuntary manslaughter, premised on the gross negligence of Conrad Murray. Thank you.
Mr. Walgren, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take the mid-morning break at this time. We're going to take a 15-minute break. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please remain bound by and follow all of my instructions as to your conduct. You can take your break in the jury room. Watch the step down and the door opens outward. Thank you.
We believe you'll
Opening
find
statement.
will be this.
Zone.
At the end of the trial, you will be given a jury charge to make a determination about whether somebody has done a crime, committed a crime.